So, you want to be a dungeon master.
So you want to be a dungeon master.
So you want to be a dungeon.
So you want to be a dungeon master.
So, you want to be a dungeon master.
That's great. We're here to help. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Justin. This week, we are going to talk about dynamic combat. Obviously, combat is a huge part of D&D. Some would even argue that it's the biggest part. But that means that over the years and campaigns, you're going to be running and fighting in a ton of combat encounters. How can we keep ourselves and our players having fun without getting bored? If every combat is just good guys versus bad guys hitting each other until one side stops, that can get old fast. So let's get into some dynamic combat.
Hell yeah.
But first,
But first,
it's going to be first. Let's discuss a D&D combat encounter that you will never forget. What made it memorable, stand out, and why do you remember that one? And is there anything we can learn from it?
yeah, okay. So I had to think about this one a bit because there's a lot of really good combats.
No doubt. And it's hard. It's hard not to get into recency bias. Where you're like, well, the most recent combat is the one that's freshest on my mind.
I think the most dynamic combat I've ever done personally as a DM was an airship battle.
Dope.
So the players had their own airship and then they were being chased by some smaller ones. Okay. And it was just there was mechanics to speed up or slow down the ship. If you ram into them, you can do damage. Cannons on the sides of the ships, all kind of crazy stuff. And on top of that, also my players were finding out ways to basically they would have somebody ram into one of the smaller ships. Two of them would jump over, start murking the whole crew. And then when all was said and done, they'd ram back and jump back onto the ship and then just keep rinse and repeat. They kept going through and absolutely demolishing stuff while, on the other side of the ship that's not getting rammed, they're going nuts with the goddamn cannons. It was a lot of fun.
That's dope. Yeah, that's definitely sounds memorable as hell. I think part of a combat being fun, maybe not dynamic in the way that we mean the word for the sake of this episode, but a combat sometimes can be very memorable and interesting. Low key, if it's just cool, you know what I mean? Based on everything you said, you also made it dynamic. But let's be honest, fighting on an airship against other airships already is going to be cool. It's just
cool. Yeah, it's
even
rad
if
as
it's
hell.
just straight up bad guys versus good guys. But but then you add in all the other being able to control the ship, and obviously we're going to get into some of this throughout the episode, so I won't go too deep. But yeah, no, that sounds dope as hell. I know we did a couple airship things, and I didn't do airship versus airship in our campaigns, our home games at least. It was more dragons and other flying things.
But you're right. It has been basically we're on the ship and then stuff shows up to hurt us on the ship.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. But still really fun. Here's what I will say for me. One of the combats, and it's I'm cheating a little bit because it's really an entire couple sessions of encounters and there were multiple combats and all this. There were two, I think, combats involved in this whole situation. But when in our home game, when you guys went to the Shadowfell, we went into the fabled forest and were encountered by the Story Weaver, a spider demigod who collects and harvests and hoards stories and tales and legends and stuff. And first of all, I'll say I based that off of I want to say West African, but I'm not 100% on that. But Anansi is the spider god. And there's some incredible lore about that particular mythological deity in terms of how they stole stories. They literally stole stories from the sky god, and it's a fucking awesome story. But anyway, so that was the basis of it. But the way I played it was a choose your own adventure. I wanted to just switch things up. At this point, you guys were what, 12th level? So we had been playing for already like 4 years at that point, 4.5 maybe. I always the time flies, man. This is episode 81. It's crazy. So like time flies is nuts. So I wanted to get really creative with it. I was like, let me push myself as a DM, but also my players in like a really interesting and fun way, something that we've never done before, or something that I don't think I've ever seen done in an actual play or anything. And I was like, this will be so cool. So obviously, choose your own adventure books is like such a classic thing, right? And it like ties in perfectly with like D&D in a different context, a different medium, but still like very similar.
Still very choose your adventure.
Yeah. And so I was like, how do I do that in a D&D game? How do I do a choose your own adventure in a D&D game where depending on what the players choose, it changes the encounters ahead? And I was like, man, that's fucking cool. So it was very much like you go into this forest and it becomes like almost like a maze because of the spider webs, and you hear a narrator. Really, it was like a magical like a loudspeaker, but whatever. You hear a narrator be like, and the adventurers must choose as they enter the fabled forest. Did they conquer the sun or vanquish the moon? And the players had to decide. And it's very it's like, okay, obviously something has to do with the sun and something has to do with the moon, but like it's very ambiguous and vague. We have no idea. You guys ended up choosing the sun, and you guys fought a solar because that's a stat block I don't get to use very often, right?
Yeah.
And then the next adventure was something to the effect of, because you guys won that fight. And then after that, it was like, after the adventurers had successfully defeated the sun, they had to make a miraculous comeback or a miraculous sacrifice. And you guys chose comeback. And that combat was really interesting like because
idiots.
You guys all started at 1 hit point. And had to fight through the fight. And you guys crushed it. I mean, these combats weren't meant to be like the most insanely devastating things in the world. It was really just like interesting plays on things. Had you chose and I already told you guys this after the game, but like had you chosen sacrifice, then I still wasn't sure if I was going to actually have like real NPCs there, that like your loved ones kind of thing of like, well, now you have to fight these monsters, or this person is being dropped down into a boiling cauldron of oil or something, you know?
Oh, God.
Where it's very like, choose, Mr. Bond. Save the girl or save the world. And that was supposed to be like the idea. Like, obviously you could do both.
Right.
Like, duh. But, and then the final thing, you face the story weaver, this spider demigod. And of course, there was a part of me that was like, maybe I'll do a combat here. But then I was like, no, he's a demigod. I want him to be really, really powerful. And I don't necessarily want that to be the vibe. And I want him to give you guys like a gift, which ended up being a wish, which was fucking awesome. But we ended up just playing like a Whose Line Is It Anyway improv game where as a group, all the players, I wasn't included, I was just listening and dying laughing. All the players had to tell a story, but you could only go one sentence at a time. And it just had to keep going around. And holy shit, that story was fucking hilarious. It was awesome. And that entire scenario.
It's about like some duck night or frog night?
Yeah, it was a frog night. It was a frog night with like a human squire. And then it was something like, one of you at some point was like, and then the flies attacked or something. One of you said something like that. And it was so funny. Dude, I'll never forget that whole situation. Again, obviously, like I said, I'm cheating a little bit with the question because it's not one combat encounter.
Yeah.
But that entire situation it tickled me pink. I was so fucking into it. I felt so good about it. As a DM, I was like, I did it. I'll never forget it. But let's get into it.
That was a really good one. Yeah, let's talk about how some ideas for like everybody else. Like those are two pretty decent ideas from our actual games and lives, but let's talk about some ideas for actually making some dynamic combats and like some ideas on how to do that and like what you can do with your tables.
Absolutely. Before we start, can we talk about what we mean by dynamic combat other than like, Oh, combat that's more interesting, which is like kind of the easy answer.
Yeah.
Hey gang, we wanted to talk to you about something pretty important real quick. See, we have some really cool ideas for the future, but we need your help. You can do that by supporting us through our Patreon. At the lowest tier, you get early access to podcast episodes, access to episodes of Action Surge, our post-session table talk show, and entry into a private channel on our Discord server. At the next tier, you can get access to Bonus Action, our bonus content podcast where we talk about a huge variety of D&D and TTRPG related things, like Multi-Class Mystery Mashup, where we get 2 random classes and have to build a character, or Monster Matchmaker, where we go over our favorite monsters at each CR level, or recaps of our home campaign, plus so much more. Joining the Patreon helps us continue to grow and put out content that gets better and better as we learn, improve, and try new things. So, check out the link in the description to join the gang today.
So basically having the encounter be combat, but then also like some kind of either a skill challenge or a puzzle or some other mechanic to the fight other than strictly what's on the character sheet, what's your, like, these are the things that my character can do of like casting spells or whatever, but really it just winds up being, you know, I punch the bad guy punches me, I punch the bad guy punches me. It's adding a little bit extra pizzazz to the fight.
Absolutely.
Something else other than just something else to do with your action economy, something that can be a difficult choice for a player to make in combat, where it's either I'm going to fight these guys or I'm going to do something to further whatever this either skill challenge or
the
what have you.
objective. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like, we recently recorded a bonus action episode. Go check out the bonus action available on our Patreon, link in the description. And we talked recently about Eat the Reich as a different tabletop role-playing game. And
yeah,
at each little location, as you're traveling through Paris, going to fuck up Hitler, it like each location has like objectives, and then there are threats, and it's like 2 different things. And you, as the team, have to decide where you're going to allocate your resources. Are we going to put everything into the objective, or into the threat, or are we going to split it up? Maybe these 2 players handle the objective, these 2 players handle the threat, and it's kind of reminding me of that a little bit, of the idea of having both the threat, which is the normal D&D combat, but then also having a secondary objective or a first objective or even a tertiary thing. I don't know, but like, yeah, it's just having something else for the players to think about, as opposed to just like really obvious where it's like, oh, what are you guys going to do on your turn? Well, obviously I'm going to hurt the bad guy. Like, that's so obvious. Or I'm going to help my friends heal. And it's like, after a bunch of years of playing D&D, that's going to get old.
Yeah.
So,
and that is really what it boils down to.
Yeah. And there's a ton of ways to do it.
Yeah.
There's millions of different ways. You can obviously bing a ton of this stuff, but we're going to go over a ton of different examples, starting broad and then getting a little bit more specific, bring up all kinds of ideas.
So I guess the first thing with dynamic combat that, you know, we should talk about, like, as far as things that you can do, you can put some kind of a skill challenge during the fight. So something that's come up in our games. I feel like I've pulled a lot of these from either games that we've had or games that I've done, of like ways to spice up the combat. But so one of the things that you can do is, like, as far as like a skill challenge, like an idea for a skill challenge of some sort, is to do like some kind of a vehicle, whether that be like a ship or some kind of a rolling vehicle on land or what have you, so that kind of needs to be maintained. Like, say the ship is going through a storm, and so you've got to be able to have somebody on the helm to hold the boat straight. You got to have somebody trying to get the sails squared away so they don't rip off the side of the boat. Maybe the fire breaks out and they've got to deal with that. Something is going wrong while also the bad guys show up. Either the bad guys caused the thing, or it's just really poor timing.
Yeah.
You can write it however you like, but giving the players something else to do, like, hey, the consequences of this skill challenge are pretty much up to you. I mean, maybe it just adds a couple of days of travel if they don't do well, or maybe the ship starts sinking and they have to figure out something to do. It really is up to the table how the writing goes. But I mean, just having some kind of boat or something with multiple stations that need to be maintained, or holes that need to be repaired, or what have you, and having the players come up with stuff to meet that need of, I'm gonna grab the ship, okay, like grab the helm, okay, and do you have proficiency in water vehicles? It gives you a chance to roll into some of these other weird proficiencies and skills that may or may not come up very often in your games.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think using a vehicle is a really fun way to make combat more interesting and dynamic, because it doesn't happen a ton. It doesn't happen very often.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just so much that can happen. It's dynamic, and also in the sense of how quickly things can change. How like the
right.
Which side is doing better can swing so fast in that regard with vehicles, because like not only do you have to worry about your own health, your own AC and all those different things, your own effectiveness, but you also have this vehicle to worry about, because presumably you're moving.
Right.
So that's huge. And so, yeah, whether it's an airship, a water ship, I guess. That felt weird to say. Or like, if you're doing more modern, I've done one with motorcycles before.
Yeah,
it was really
cool.
Fucking cool, dude. It was Sphinx City my Sphinx City home game. They had to break into Excelsior, or not break into Excelsior. Actually, they had to a shipment with an 18-wheeler essentially was coming to one of the Excelsior warehouses, and they had to steal it for
nice.
for
Fast
Trincula,
and Furious. Fuck
of
yeah.
all people.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, they could have just stole the insides or somehow, I guess it depended on how they wanted to do it. It was really open to them, They got to scout out the place, figure out the security, how they were going to go about it. One person in the group was a tinkerer, so they made a spike strip.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, dude, it was fucking smart as hell, because guess what some of the motorcycle security guards did? Run right the fuck over it. So that was crazy. So when I say motorcycles, the bad guys were on the motorcycles. The good guys are driving in the cab of a fucking 18-wheeler through the busy metropolis streets of Sphinx City.
Oh, nice.
And I rolled for random encounters, like not random encounters in the most traditional sense, but like more like hazards.
Yeah.
Uh-oh, somebody's crossing the road. What are you guys going to do? Are we slowing down? Splat. Are we speeding up? Oh, you guys have a 90-degree turn coming up. This is an 18-wheeler. What are we doing? Like, it was fucking cool, dude. It was so fun. But it was like my first time doing that, and it was a little challenging because of the mechanics of it, of like, do the players, I want to make sure we have vehicle to vehicle combat. We're going to go into greater detail a little later. Maybe I'll save that question for then. But yeah, vehicles are a great idea. I think they're so fun. There's so much you can do with that. There's so many interesting things that can be maintained and checked out while combat is going on. The simplest is just driving the vehicle. But then, like you were saying, gun stations, repairing the ship or vehicle, getting bad guys off of the thing, like people who are jumping on board, like Mad Max style.
Right. Yeah. Like cutting like the boarding hooks and stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely.
There's a lot of stuff that you can do there.
So many cool things. Not to mention, like, obviously with like, it depends on the vehicle and everything, but like if I see here you have sails written down, it just makes me think of if you're doing on like a boat ship or an airship and there are sails, a lot of those are flammable. Like that's a crazy thing to happen, especially if your whole fucking vehicle's made of wood.
Yeah. Fire sucks in these situations.
Most of the time. It's not great for modern vehicles either, but for some reason in my head,
no, but I'm just
bad for
like
ones.
Yeah, like if a vehicle was to break down on land, it might not be the end of the world. If a ship sinks out in the middle of the ocean or an airship just drops out of the fucking sky.
Mm-hmm.
Big problems there. Big problems.
Yeah, man. Yeah. A lot of cool stuff there. Whoa. Yeah. I think it's really fun. And let's really briefly, so when we say skill challenge, what do we mean?
Using some form of action economy to use one of your skills rather than specifically attacking or casting a spell at a person or something along those lines. Doesn't necessarily have to be a skill, but like you want to grab the ship's helm. Okay, you're in the middle of a storm. That's going to be a an athletics check with, do you have proficiency with land vehicles? Yes or no? No. Okay, so it's just a straight athletics check.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's definitely one way to go about it for sure. Skill challenge is an interesting thing because, like, I think the phrasing came in 4th edition. I can't remember. I don't know if it came in an earlier edition, but like skill challenges was like a specific thing. And it was like a series of challenges. You were making these ability checks.
Yes.
Ticking them off kind of. And, if you got a success, it might reduce the overall DC. If you got a failure, it would heighten it for the next person.
The way that
it's really cool idea. I know that the older editions...
So the way that it kind of worked is you had basically a certain number of successes that needed to be achieved by the party before you would quote unquote win. Mm-hmm. Some of them you could have it set up where if you fail a certain amount of time, something bad happens, or it could just be, okay, well, we're going to keep doing this. And whatever happens, and it kind of leads to like a narrative, kind of leads into the next point that I was getting at. Cause that's kind of where this thought came from, is like a chase sequence of, say somebody like yells out, "Oh, guards, stop him." And then the guards start chasing you like in a heavy urban environment. Like the way that the 3.5 skill challenge would be is like, okay, in order to get away from these guards, you need to succeed 3 times.
Right.
And you would do stuff narratively to say, okay, well, I'm going to use my streetwise was a thing back in the day. I'm going to use my streetwise to sneak through the crowd and get lost in the crowd, or, go down a certain alley or something like that. And so that still very much translates to 5th edition. But
no doubt,
maybe not you don't necessarily, I wouldn't say, need to have like, oh, you need 3 successes to win. I think if you do it that way, then, you're kind of, that just becomes just a straight skill challenge. What I'm considering is like, oh, you're chasing the big bad through the streets of a town, or, some person of interest, and you need to get them down to 0 HP. So as they're running, they're also like trying to duck out down an alley, or maybe you're trying to set up an ambush of some sort. So you go down a different alley and kind of hide from them, or something along those lines. This is kind of works better in theater of the mind.
Yeah, especially in a like either a chase or an escape or something like that, because you're moving so much.
Yeah.
Like if people are familiar with the Fantasy High, the first season of Dimension 20, with the car fight scene where they were getting chased by a bunch of motorcycles, like the amount of times that they had to change the map was insane. Now they have a professional production team, so for them, no problem. But even after having to change a digital map on a VTT would be a pain in the ass. To change it over and over again. Not that you can't do that. That sounds dope as hell too. Your players will love that shit, but it is extra. It's a ton of extra work.
It's a lot of extra work.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think for people listening, like, you can do a skill challenge without combat in a million different scenarios, and then I think what we're suggesting is trying to maybe do a skill challenge during combat.
Right.
And like seeing how that goes, in the sense of just giving the players a little bit more options to do, and putting a lot of emphasis on how powerful maybe some of their abilities can be. So I think, that would really depend, because I know for some players, they're going to be like, well, shit, why would I make an athletics check when I can fucking cast Fireball or something like that? I'm not saying all players, but some players will think that. And I think it would be up to it would be up to the DM to really make those skill checks matter, or B, you could, and this is just another idea for a mechanic, it's totally up to the table and the DM and everything. You could have like, okay, Taylor, it's your turn. Go ahead and make your skill check, and then you have the rest of your normal turn.
Yeah.
So it's like in addition to your normal turn, action, bonus action, whatever, you also get just like a free ability check, but it's like really going to fucking matter. We're not talking like a random ass Arcana check to see if you remember the weakness of a Rakshasa, you know? We're talking to, actually, that might be a good example of one. But like, but like really intense stuff of like, hey, I need to make a history check to see if this fucking alleyway that we're coming up to is a dead end. I can't remember or not. And if you get it, then yes, you know that it's a dead end. Don't go that way or whatever, you know? And what I will also say to people who are interested in the idea of skill challenges, whether they're in combat or not, and I don't usually do this lightly, recommend other D&D and tabletop channels and stuff, but Matthew Colville, he's fucking famous, so I'm not worried about losing people to him, but Matthew Colville has some really good YouTube videos on first name Matthew, last name Colville, Colville, has some really good videos on skill challenges. That's how I first learned about them, because I came in at 5th edition, and 5th edition doesn't really bring it up that much. They do, but just not that much.
Yeah.
Like you almost never see it in a module. It's just like a thing in the Dungeon Master's Guide as like here's a thing you could do. And that's kind of it. But I love this idea. I mean, the chase sequence is really fun in either direction, either being chased or being the chaser. Really fun, because you can expand upon just that first idea so many different ways. Maybe you're hunting something for like a specific sport or a tournament of some kind. You're like hunting a magical boar through the forest. And so therefore you have to do a skill challenge as you're going along, but you're fighting against other hunters. And so on your turn, you can use like the slow spell and slow down these other hunters so that your team is victorious, you know? Or you could do like an escape scene. Is it one idea that I've had in the back of my head for a long time. But you guys always get out of those caves, or you don't go in the caves. Remember when you guys were in the Sea of Swords, you're on the ship, and there was a part where it was like one person on the ship, I think it was a random encounter. One person on the ship said something to the effect of like, "Oh yeah, well, right below us is a underwater cave that's supposed to have a ton of treasure." And you guys all collectively were like, "Nope, we got to keep moving." And I remember being like, "Damn, that sucks." Because I had plans, and they were low key a little fucked up. Because you guys had water breathing, right? Because of the warlock character.
Yeah.
And I was going to use some kind of either anti-magic or dispelling thing.
Oh, what a dick.
Not in the beginning. It would have been at the very end. It would have been like, okay, you guys got all the treasure. You killed the bad guys, whatever it was. Then it happens. So then it would have been at the very beginning of the escape scene. So it's like, we got to get out of this fucking underwater cave network as fast as possible. It's Mario 64. Dun 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 dun. You know what I mean? That was the vibe. Really intense. This is before this is so long ago in our like D&D careers / history. I don't even think we did a session 0 at that point. That probably would have been a really triggering game to some people. Holy shit. Thank God we do those now. That's crazy to think about. But yeah, other ways to make escape scenes, chase scenes really interesting too. You can like use a timer or some kind of device to kind of ramp up the tension a little bit. I've seen that been used to great success, whether it's like an egg timer or sand timer kind of thing, or a digital timer, or all kinds of things, or even like
a turn counter.
A what kind of timer?
A turn counter.
Oh, turn counter is a good one.
If every round is 6 seconds, it's like, okay, well, you've got 30 seconds to get out of here. That's 5 rounds of combat.
Yeah, hell yeah. And here's an amazing and insanely cheap and affordable way to do this. Now, obviously, if you're playing virtually, you could just remind everybody, okay, we're in the 3rd round. Okay, we're in the 4th round. But if you want to just remind yourself or remind the table of which round we're on, just grab a D6 and just, hey, 4 is up. That's what round we're on, you know? And then you can just count down like that. Just an idea.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about puzzles during combat. I'm a big fan of puzzles,
Sure.
and I think it's really funny because I know that there are so many people in the D&D/tabletop community who are like not about puzzles. I fucking love them, and I never get them as a player. It makes me so sad. Which is why I have to force them on my players sometimes.
I think part of it is DMs getting shell shocked by what seems to be a very simple puzzle. But due to wording choices or something like that, it takes the players way, way, way too long to figure out.
Yeah, no doubt. Plus, like, just a level of like paranoia and being like, there's no way it's that easy. So there's a little bit of like overthinking. I mean, remember in Sphinx City, there was a giant red button that said, do not press this. And like, I've played that game with multiple groups, and there are the groups who are like, absolutely, I'm going to press it immediately. And then there are groups who are like, wait, guys. What if this is a double psychology kind of thing where it's like, it says do not press, which obviously means we should press it. But what if they expect that's what they expect us to think. So then it's actually a double bluff. And then it starts getting into like insane conspiracy. There's red string, and you're like, Jesus, guys, just press the button.
Yeah. There is no Carol in HR.
So there is no war.
So let's talk about some different puzzles that we can do in combat.
Heck yeah.
So the first one, actually, when I was writing this outline, I stole it from you because you said it to me, and then it wound up on the outline somehow magically.
Yeah, it's from Baldur's Gate. I stole it from them.
Yeah. Fair enough. Okay, cool. So theft all around. Love that. Basically, this is you give your big bad damage immunity until the players figure something out to make him not immune. It could be certain bad guys in a swarm or a mob of things, like specific ones have to be killed first in order to make the boss vulnerable. Or it could just be like all the minions, or it could even be some kind of like a magic item that the players either have on their person or somewhere in the room or something along those lines that needs to be broken. But for one reason or another, their players show up to this big bad and try to attack him, and nothing works until you do something in there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a ton of different examples of this, but yeah, I remember doing this in our home game. We did one where I had a spellcaster, evil warlock, had a scroll open, was reading the scroll, and it was going to take X number of rounds. So there's already, I'm using a mechanic from earlier with the round counter thing, or turn counter. Then he had a globe of invulnerability around him, so you could not fucking touch him. But the only way to break that down was there were 4 obelisks around
that were
the
miles
arena.
Apart.
They were miles apart from where you guys started, but they were pretty close to each other, I think. Not that far. Especially with the spells like Chill Touch, and like there's some spells you could have hit things with. Of course, I underestimated how difficult this encounter would have been just because the map was too big.
Right. It was a huge
the map was just simply too big. I mean, granted, some of you, I'm pretty sure, teleported pretty quickly. But the way that worked was each obelisk corresponded to it. There was only 4 of them, and there's like 9 schools of magic or 8 schools of magic. Each one corresponded to a specific school of magic. I double checked the player spell lists. I knew what spells they had. You know what I mean? So I intentionally chose ones that you guys had spells of. And all you had to do is hit that obelisk with that school of magic, and you're good to go. And of course, I allowed Arcana checks, detect magic, different things like that to suss out without having to do a ton of guessing and checking. But if you destroyed all 4 obelisks, the globe of invulnerability would fall, and you could attack the guy directly. If not, and the 4 or 5 rounds go by, then he turns into a bigger monster. Is really the gist.
Yeah,
and it was a ton of fun. And then like in Baldur's Gate, there's a wizard that you fight. Spoilers. There's a wizard that you fight. And he's got a bunch of elementals, like not like the Myrmidon ones that wear armor. And he's got one of each: Earth, Wind, September. What's this song that Earth, Wind, and Fire sing?
Earth, Wind, and Fire?
That's what I was thinking. It's just like, oh man, there's a a fun music joke. Anyway, so yeah, and also water and earth and air and fire. And so the way it worked was he was doing a ton of damage. If memory serves, yeah, he was immune to all types of damage until you started taking out. You had to kill the Myrmidons first. Mm-hmm. So it's like it's such a classic D&D trope, at least in my opinion, of like, oh, we clearly have the boss, and then we have the minions. Let's not even fuck with the minions. Let's focus fire the boss, kill them. Then the minions. Best case scenario, they just vanish or die. Worst case scenario. They keep fighting us, but now they don't have a leader. So it's just like their morale's going to be down. It's all this different stuff. So that's just such a normal thing for players to do, that this was a really fun shakeup of being like, hey man, waste your high level spells because they're instantly not working. And you have to start attacking all of these Myrmidons. And that's what you have to do in order to knock down his immunities. And it was really fucking smart. It was a fun thing. And I remember after that encounter, honestly, Baldur's Gate 3 inspired me a lot with a bunch of ideas.
That's fair.
Because it's a video game, it's just inherently different than a tabletop role-playing game. So, like, the way they went about some of the challenges and combats, like, I think an easy way to make the combat, maybe not dynamic isn't the right word, but, like, to make a combat feel a little bit more interesting than every other combat is how the combat starts. I think can be, like, a fun thing to switch up and change around. But yeah, I like the idea of puzzle during combat. The next one we have is the room is sealed, potentially filling with water or sand.
Hell yeah.
That's a scary slash really good one, though.
Yeah, so this one I stole from, I think it's
Star Wars.
Greetings Adventurers podcast. Well, no, so like Star Wars does
they don't even have a fight.
Right?
Well,
but there's no fight going on.
There's a monster, though. It's attacking Luke.
Yeah, but I mean, let's be honest. They all just kind of sit there and scream, and then R2-D2 saves them.
Thank gosh.
It's not a whole lot of fire. Not a whole lot of fighting going.
No, you're right.
But
it would be a good example because you could make it into a fight,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. You could put the squeezy walls in any kind of moment of just dire, like if we don't figure this out, we're going to die type of a situation. Mm-hmm. So the encounter basically was they had they walk into the room, and then in classic dungeon fashion, the doors all slam shut, and then water starts pouring in from the roof. And they're like, oh crap. And every round basically the DM just kind of would raise the water level a couple of inches, or you know what have you. So like, the first round, it's just kind of like puddles that you're splashing around in. Second round, it's up to your calves. Third round, it's up above your knees. And then they also start suffering movement penalties and stuff. Yeah. And so in the midst of all of this, there are enemies around that have no such water restrictions. They can move just as freely in water as out of it. So these enemies are doing their thing. And then there's also a set of statues in the room that one has like a sword. One of them has a staff. One of them has a bow. One of them has a shield. And they basically had to work out that the sword statue, they had to hit it with a sword. And then the wizard staff, they had to hit it with some kind of a spell, and the bow, they had to hit it with some kind of a ranged weapon.
And the shield,
and then the shield was they had to cast protection magic on it. That one took them the longest to get.
Oh yeah, that would take me a while too. I was like,
yeah.
As soon as you said sword one, you had to hit with a sword. I was like, all right, cool. You hit them all with the same weapon. Done. I'm hitting that shield with a shield. I'm sure they tried that.
They did. They did. No, but that one was actually they cast. What is it? Magic armor or whatever. There's like armor, a cantrip. Yeah. Major, not I don't, because mage armor is self. There's another one, Shield of Faith.
Oh yes,
that allows you to put AC onto something else, and that's what did it. And then basically they did that, and the doors opened back up, and there was so much water in the room at that time because it took them like 2 rounds to figure it out after already getting the other 3. That it was like they were swimming. And so they hit the last one, and the doors open up, and the water moving out like just sucked them down a hallway because
Yeah, of course. Yeah, water's going to take the path of least resistance, and it's going to bring those fuckers along.
Yeah, exactly.
That's crazy. That's really fun, though. That's really, really cool. I
like
that idea.
Right. And so the other, like, a kind of twist on this encounter that I have personally used is to have like 4 statues in a room. They all look identical, but you have to basically strike them in a certain order.
Mm-hmm.
And that order can be given out. Either they can sit there and try to brute force it, because let's be honest, it's only 4 things. But brute forcing it, when you have to waste an entire attack action to do 1 statue, could take a while. Or, you can have in the room, if somebody cares to investigate, or have it as some a reward for good investigation earlier in the session of, here's the order that you have to hit it in, or part of the order, just so they're not floundering around for it. That's definitely something on the table. And basically I had an NPC that they had saved and was like, all right, well, you got to hit the 3rd and the 4th statues last. And so they still have to figure out part of the code, but they go into the room and they realize that, hey, these are statues that we have to figure out the combination for, basically.
Yeah.
Let's get to work, type of deal.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a million ways you can, with through exposition and other descriptions of the rooms and even the hallways leading to this room, you can give a million different clues. It can even be kind of vague foreshadowing of like you mentioned the statues with the order, like doing them in the specific order. Like hypothetically, you could have like in the very first entry room of the dungeon, there's a mural on the wall in like tile mosaic, and it features 4 warriors, and here's the order that they're, first is this guy carrying an axe, and then there's a guy carrying a sword, and then like 2 sessions later they get to the room with the fucking statues, and it's like, oh shit, what order were they in? Note taker, help us. Like, that's so fun to me. Not to mention like the hidden text or illusory script, or this is like always puzzles are such a fun fucking way to utilize language proficiencies too.
Oh yeah.
Because then you can kind of hand pick who you want to read these clues and stuff, because obviously unless the players have comprehend languages or tongues or something like that, like I feel like it's a little bit of a dick move to be like, oh, no one speaks Celestial? Okay, I guess you're just gonna have to figure it out. And it's like, well, you should know it, who can speak what. So what's the point? Unless they don't need the text, and then it's like whatever. But yeah, I do love this so much. There's a really specific puzzle combat that happened in Critical Role that I plan on stealing because it's good. And it's literally a puzzle that you have to solve during combat. You're fighting a massive monster that has legendary actions and lair actions and all this stuff, legendary resistances, you name it. And while that's happening, you have to solve a puzzle. That puzzle requires you not only to solve the puzzle, but in order to solve the puzzle, you have to run around the room to look for clues, to look for answers of how to solve this puzzle. And so all of this is happening while you guys are being attacked, while you're attacking the thing that's fighting you, or at least defending yourselves, or whatever you choose to do.
Right.
Because obviously it depends on who this monster is. In my head and how Critical Role did it, it was actually a friendly NPC. But the test was the combat and test was all about like, are you worthy?
The Sphinx thing?
Oh shit, I forgot you saw the
Yeah, I've seen
I forgot you saw the animated show. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, it is the Sphinx. Now, the TV show changed it completely. It was still a Sphinx. They still had a little bit of a challenge, right? And it was like, whatever.
Right.
I got to be honest. The way that Matt Mercer did it at the actual play was way fucking cooler. Because it was the same thing of like, what is my name? He said. Like, that was the challenge. The riddle, riddle or puzzle or whatever was, what is my name? And there was really specific ways that the players could figure out letters of his name. And then they had to unscramble it and figure it out and stuff like that. But there was like things they had to do around the room to find out letters of his name so that they could spell it out. And it was really challenging. And I think 2 of them almost died during that puzzle fight.
Yeah.
Like in the actual play too. It was really, really heavy and intense. It was freaking dope. I just remember being like, yeah, this is so interesting because it's just not as straightforward, and I love it.
Yeah. And that's what this whole episode's about. Non-linear combat.
Yeah, just adding in another element, another layer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you got your normal layer, bad guys versus good guys. And then you just add in 1, 2, 3 other things. It could be
4.
something really simple to spice it up. Like honestly, if all you and your table have ever done is just bad guy versus good guy, just adding in like townspeople that could get caught in crossfire already changes the dynamic.
100%.
But then of course you can continue to add things and make things even more dynamic, change things up. There's a million different things, but I want to get into this vehicle to vehicle combat.
Yeah.
This is where I thought, I'm glad we're getting into it, because as I was saying before, I've done this. To me, and this is just because, number one, I homebrewed the whole thing. I was just kind of fucking around. It was a home game. I found it a little confusing for me personally. I like the way I did it was every player has their own turn, and then there's like the vehicle has a turn, if you will.
Yes.
And whoever's driving gets to do it.
I basically had the ship be a layer action, and then whoever's at the helm is the person who decides, or gunner or something. But it
like the players can talk, but it's
right.
It's the PC who's behind the wheel gets to decide if they're slowing down, accelerating, maintaining, ramming into people, whatever it may be. And it was interesting because like obviously with initiative, it kind of was like a little interesting sometimes to have people be like, just the turn order of things. Like I just found it to be a little interesting in terms of how it all played out. But I'm also like, obviously as we're recording this, Dimension 20 is currently coming out with Cloudward Ho, which has vehicle combat, spoilers, and
specifically airship combat.
Yeah, for sure. And correct me if I'm wrong, but in that first combat episode, I know like did they
ran it like Starstruck. So they ran it like Starstruck, where each person had their action and then also a ship action.
That I find that to be pretty interesting, especially when there's multiple stations. Like obviously you need multiple stations in order for that to make sense. And by stations, I also mean like roles, like ROLES, like you're the bosun, you're the one who fixes the ship, so you don't have like a station. It's not like a gunner station, but you know what we mean.
But you can boss around the crew on your turn, type of deal.
So fucking cool.
Yeah, you're a gunner, so you're able to man the cannons and shoot them successfully. The ship captain or the helmsman is the person who actually is steering the boat.
Yeah, but I do love that way of doing it, or I love the way of either that or there's a specific like ship or vehicle action, because I think, and this is just me, the last thing I want to do is have a player who they're in the driver's seat, they're driving the thing, and it's like that's all they get to do is just maintain, speed up, slow down, and they don't get to do anything but that. That I don't like.
Yeah. I'm with you, and that's why I did it as a layer action.
No doubt.
So the players still had their turn. Yeah, so the players still had their turn, but then on the layer action, provided they're at the helm at the end of their turn, they will be able to do, when the layer action comes up, they'll be able to move the ship.
Yeah, for sure. Which is also, let's just say this, what a cool idea for the bad guys. Get that captain off that fucking ship, or away from the wheel, like pull them away from the wheel and then grapple them. Boom. Hey, layer action. Oh, no one's at the wheel. You guys don't get one. That's right. That's pretty crazy.
But yeah, and then also, so other than the driver, the other players, like if they chose to do something to help the ship, like sales or repair or something like that, barring some kind of a spell, I would allow them to give, like it would give a bonus to the roll for the helmsman. And then they also still got their turn.
Oh, nice.
However, stuff like shooting a cannon or something offensive, that's your whole action. So you can either shoot the cannon or do an attack or something like that, or you can do something, and you can't shoot a cannon and then go turn around and help the sails. Like it's either a ship action or your actual physical action.
Yeah. And I think some of that comes down to balancing too, in the sense of like how much damage do the cannons do? Because like hypothetically, if the cannons didn't do that much damage, like cannons by their very nature sound like they do a ton of damage. But let's say that it was like a ballista or something, also doing a ton of damage. But like, let's just say numbers wise, if the ballista or the cannon doesn't do that much damage, then maybe you could let them shoot a cannon and then also cast a spell. But if you have it set up that the cannon and or ballista is doing a ton of damage, then I agree with Taylor.
Yeah.
Maybe that is their whole action, you know?
It was a fireball.
Oh, yeah. That's your whole fucking turn. Yeah. Excuse me?
Yeah.
Or action, rather. Yeah. Get out of town. Yeah. Go fly.
So it's fireball, but it's fireball damage, but it was an attack roll instead of
a saving throw.
Sense.
Yeah.
And on top of that, the cannons were kind of the only things that could actually do damage physically to the other ships other than your ship. I kind of, depending on how the narrative was going, the ramming damage kind of varied from turn to turn.
That makes sense.
As far as how much
it's a little, because ramming is such an interesting mechanic in general, because it's like naturally you're also going to do a little bit of damage to yourself, right? Like
so
obviously, and it also like depends what you're hitting and what speed you're going and what speed the other thing is going if you're trying to get serious about it. But that's not why we play D&D, let's be honest. But so
so the introduction of damage thresholds is big for a fight like this, where the players themselves, unless they are casting fireball levels of spells onto other ships, are not going to be able to fizz like a barbarian's great axe. As much as you love him to death, he's not cutting a goddamn ship in half. He's not really doing anything to it. So basically a damage threshold is one specific attack has to do a certain amount of damage before that damage can be applied to whatever is being attacked. So say your damage threshold is 20. A player has to do more than 20 hit points of damage to the ship for it to even take damage. If it does 19 damage, that ship suffers no damage. If it does 24 damage, it takes 4 damage.
Wait, hold on. Because I remember I was going to ask this before. So because I've always been a little confused by this. Like I know how I just run it one way because I'm like, I'm not going to get too into it. So damage threshold is 20. I do 24 points of damage. That means that the ship takes 24?
Correct.
Okay. That's good to know. I would also be okay with in a world where it was like, and this would change the balancing, obviously. But you could also do like, okay, you did 24 points of damage. Hey, the ship takes 4 points of damage. Now that's obviously very different, and that would change the dynamic. Not the dynamic. I don't want to use that word again, but like change the balancing of that situation. But it is a cool other mechanic. It's different.
It basically just boils down to how much HP each one of these things have. I had it set up to where these smaller ships had to take 3 hits. So they had like 75 hit points. So 3 hits from the cannons, they're toast. Or if something can do 75 damage in one wallop, then down she goes.
Hell yeah.
But it has to be one hit. It's not like, if you're using multi-attack or something like that, like you don't add all the damage together. Each hit is only, however much damage that one hit is. If you're only hitting for 15 and then you do that twice, that doesn't count as 30 damage. That's still 15 damage twice.
Yeah. I love this. I mean, I think it's really fun. I mean, anytime you're doing vehicle to vehicle combat or
it's just
or cool. Even just a single vehicle and then like a bunch of wyverns or whatever, like either way, it's all fun. It's so cool. I think if you're trying to like homebrew this stuff, I think it can get a little tricky with balancing because it's like how you set up the action economy to fire a ballista and whether you're doing separate battle station turns or you have to use the ballista on your turn. Obviously, it depends on how much damage the ballista is doing. Because, like Taylor said, if it's a fireball, that's your fucking action, buddy. But like, if it's like 2d6, then like I'm okay with that being its own turn, and then you also get a turn. Like, and then like, we mentioned it earlier, but this is also a great use of toolkit proficiencies. There's a million different things you could do depending on the situation, whether it's a carpenter's tools or, whatever. Weaver's tools, you're fixing the fucking sails. That's dope. I would allow that. Hell yeah. Something like that. I think the Weaver's tools is a thing, isn't it?
I think that it is a thing. I don't think you would use Weaver's tools to make a patch of sail.
You definitely wouldn't, but in this scenario, I'm gonna let you use it, make a quick patch. Enough. I like that idea. I think it's funny.
Honestly, fair.
It's a quick band-aid, but for the time being in the combat, I'll allow it. I do love that. I also think a really fun thing to even add more dynamic, like, hey, let's ramp it up to 11, is while all of this is happening, hey, also some environmental hazards.
Oh yeah.
So going back to the cars on the road thing, hey, there's potholes. Hey, there's a car accident on the road. Hey, a police officer just like pulls out and is like, hey, you're speeding. You're like, fuck this guy. What's going on? Or like, hey, a pedestrian's jaywalking and you got to swerve out of the way. Like there's so many fun, interesting things that you could do. I also just included jumps and ramps because just the idea of that is fun to me.
It's just rad. Yeah.
It's just rad. Why not, dude? Just a motorcycle jumping and then landing on the top of an 18-wheeler seems dope as hell to me. But
yeah,
you can also do it in the sky with airships or in the water with things. Obviously, storms is an easy one. If you, I never like to step on people's toes when it comes to certain things. So it's like, as long as you don't have a wild magic sorcerer at the table, you can always have them go through a wild magic storm where people who aren't wild magic sorcerers, every time they cast a leveled spell, they have to roll a d20 and see if they wild magic surge. And that's like a really fun, interesting dynamic to add to the game. So many interesting things you could do to just continually add another thing for the players to think about. That's, I think, the part of dynamic combat is like when it comes up to a player's turn, you kind of want them to have to pause for at least a second to be like, what am I going to do actually?
Right.
And every once in a, it's not like every single combat needs to be so super fucking dynamic and the most complex and layers and layers and layers and tertiary objectives. Not. Every once in a while, it's cool to just be like, hey, here's the monster, hit it. That's cool sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think it's real easy to, especially with those of our audience who are watching like stuff like Critical Role and Dimension 20 and stuff like that. It's real easy. I would say especially Dimension 20. I haven't seen a whole lot of Critical Role, so I can't speak for their combat, but Dimension 20 always has some other thing going on.
Almost always. I think like 99% of the time. There might be like one sleeper out there, but like almost always.
Right. And I think it's real easy to get caught into, because I know that I have gotten caught in the thought that every combat has to be this crazy wild thing, and it doesn't.
It really doesn't.
There's definitely other ways to make the fight interesting just by putting cool monsters in the fight that have cool cool abilities and different mechanics. That's another way to spice things up other than, and it's still just good guy versus bad guy type of deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, some monsters are just freaking cool. And they have cool abilities and cool, they look cool. They have cool like lore about them that you can draw inspiration from, even if you don't decide to use all of it, That's why some people shit on like the monster manual and stuff, and I think that's so interesting to me because it's like, it gets old after a while, and like maybe there's things I would change about certain stuff, but it's like at the end of the day, it's just a good starting off point. I don't understand why people hate on it. And I'm being a little more specific. There's like really specific people who are like, the monster manual isn't good. Here are 10 better options. And it's like, hey, those other options are also good. But like, hey man, it's okay. Yeah. So you never know what you're going to find. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've like, I'm flipping pages through either the D&D Monster Manual or Tome of Beasts by Kobold Press. Everyone knows I'm a huge fan of those 3 volumes. But like you go through, you find a monster that looks cool based probably on the way that it looks or whatever, or the name or something. And then you read the little blurb of lore. You don't have to use any of that, right? Obviously. But you never know what's going to be in there because they might just mention a tiny detail in there that opens your mind where you're like, oh shit, that would be wild, you know?
Right.
And it just informs different things. Like, it wasn't a combat encounter. It was a social encounter, but it was really fucking fun for me. And it happened to you guys in the Feywild in our home campaign, Sword Coast Coup, where you guys ran across an Ettercap, which is like kind of a spider humanoid sort of thing. It has like the face of a spider, but the rest of their body kind of looks more humanoid, except their purplish skin. But in the lore, and I would never have known this if I didn't read the lore, they're kind of like spider farmers or like shepherds of spiders. And I was like, whoa, that's a crazy idea. And then I was like, we're in the Feywild, but I kind of want my version of the Feywild to be both the Disney version of Alice in Wonderland and the Tim Burton version of Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
Right? I want it to be both.
Yeah.
And kind of like switch between the two. Like sometimes it's very colorful and whimsical and cute, and other times it's like kind of fucking creepy. And this was one of those creepy moments that's also a character who is just very cute. He looks terrifying, but he sounds cute and he's very nice and gentle. And so it was like you're walking through the forest and, oh my gosh, there's a bunch of spider webs. You guys are surrounded by dozens of giant spiders. And then you just hear from the background, oh my God, I'm so sorry about that, y'all. My spiders got loose. I'm so sorry about that. Hi, my name's Frank. I'm a spider farmer. Y'all want any silk? Like, it was just hilarious. But I never would have known that if I didn't read that one little tiny sentence in the fucking lore thing, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just like so much inspiration there. And not to mention that can also help you with building a dynamic combat as well, because they'll mention things in there of like, this monster works well with this monster or something, or here's how this monster came to be, or here's monsters that this one doesn't like and doesn't fuck around with. Because that could be a really interesting thing too. I've had some.
And I think a lot of the layer options, a lot of the layers lend themselves very well to dynamic style combats. On top of the layer actions, just like for one monster, like this is basically like you don't want to burn yourself out doing this, but like for one monster, you get to this big, BBG type of dude. They've got layer actions, and also there's you got to figure out a puzzle. And also the room is filling up with water or a million other things you could add into this.
Yeah. There's so much you can do. And here's some quick tips. And this isn't necessarily going to make your combat the most dynamic, but they're just fast tips, especially good for beginners to just kind of make combat a little bit more engaging. One thing that I love to do, and I've learned this through actual plays, because like, Brennan does a really good job of this. Matt does too a little bit, but Brennan is really the one that I'm thinking of. Have bad guys, when it's the bad guy's turn, have them say a little something, Yeah. Say a little quip, say a little insult, say a little thing. It can be completely meaningless and just like fun fodder, or it can also be like kind of interesting and maybe even telling. Like maybe it's even like some important information or foreshadowing or something, but you never know. Like, or it could just be stupid, like the Mad Hatter in the public domains, where I just had a list of dumb things I found on the internet over the years. For example, if you're not eating corn dogs with me, you're eating corn dogs against me. Like, that's just dumb, but it makes me laugh. And it was like, he's the Mad Hatter. This checks out. Another one, and we've talked about it very briefly already through the skill challenges kind of thing. Yeah. But even if you're not doing a skill challenge, let players make skill checks for free. Yeah. Not all the time. I think it depends on the combat. It depends on how powerful you run skill checks in terms of things. Like if for example, I have players who constantly are like, let me make some kind of intelligence check to see if I've heard of this monster so that I can learn all of its weaknesses and all of its strengths and how, you know what I mean? And like, there is a tiny part of me that's like, I literally refuse to give you too much information every time you do that, especially when you've built your character to be like nigh invincible when it comes to intelligence checks.
Right.
So like, there are times where I'm just straight up like, yes, you can do it. I'll give you a bit, but I am absolutely not going to tell you every resistance and immunity and everything like that, because your character can't do that. And we're homebrewing this kind of as we go. So how much you give is truly up to you as the DM. But it can be really fun because it can change the combat. It can be an interesting way. Sometimes I love to do it also after things happen. A player casts a spell. It doesn't work, but it doesn't work. It's not that it doesn't work because of they made the saving throw. It didn't work because this monster is immune to being charmed, right? So they cast the spell. Okay, they have to make a save DC. I pretend to roll the dice, and then I look at the monster stat. It says immune to being charmed. And then, so I'll be like, oh, okay, the spell did not work, unfortunately. But go ahead and make an Arcana check. They make the Arcana, again, it's free, action economy wise. They make the Arcana check. I make up a number in my head, like 15 or whatever. If they hit it, then I'm like, you think that this monster actually is immune to being charmed, you know? Things like that, I think can be really, really helpful and interesting, and just ways to add information so that the players can make better informed choices. The next one we already kind of talked about, but using a clock or some kind of timekeeping device or some kind of way to delineate that like things are building up and ramping up could be really, really interesting and fun. And last but not least, something that I'm a big fan of, there's been like a couple times where I've tried to set things up and you guys have avoided them or just haven't gone in that direction, and so they're just still in the recycling bin getting ready to be reused. But a third party in the fight, you know, so you got the bad guys versus the good guys, and then here come a different group of guys, and you're like, whoa, what side are you on? And they're like, not your guys' sides, either of your guys' sides actually, or like maybe they're closer to one side, who knows? But there's a million different ways you can do that. It doesn't even need to be like quote unquote guys in the sense of like humanoids. My plan originally was, I had this one plan that I thought was going to be so fucking cool. It was on the Magic Island that you guys were on forever ago. And here's how it was going to be set up, right? You guys are just traveling along and you begin to hear a fight going on. So then it's truly up to you guys. Like, do you go investigate, right? Let's say you do. What's happening is a couple of giants are fighting a young dragon. And so it's legitimately, there isn't a ton of information. It's kind of up to you guys. A, do you help or intervene at all? Do you just leave them be, you know? Or do you pick a side? And which side do you pick? And guess what? There's an ancient dragon nearby, and that's their baby. And so that's a thing. So if you pick the giant side, you will have to not only fight that young dragon, but also fight the ancient dragon that's chilling around the corner or whatever. But if you help the young dragon defeat the giants, you receive an incredible boon from the ancient dragon, and you have just befriended an ancient dragon.
Hell yeah.
But you guys didn't go that way. So that's just in the tank. I'll pull it out later.
Fair enough.
But I think that's a really fun idea because that happens all the time. I think we did do that on the Magic Island though, where there was like a fight that was kind of like that, where it was like, you know, there's wild animals going around and stuff. So like you're fighting, you and another group are fighting, and then boom, T-Rexes or a Tarrasque just come running by. Like they don't give a shit about your fight, right? This isn't like ancient military where there was like an honor to one-on-one fights. It's like, no, dog, that's an animal. It doesn't give a shit about your honor. It's gonna interrupt this fight. It's cutting into your dance, homie.
Right.
Like they're stealing your dance partner. And so I think there's a million different ways to make combat more exciting and dynamic, and like just add layers to it to make it a bit more interesting and switch things up, you know. Let us know what your ideas are. Send us an email.
For sure, yeah.
You know, add us on Discord and stuff like that. Follow us on social media, all the stuff. But I was actually looking up because I went to Reddit to find more examples of things because I just wanted to be prepared, for this particular episode. And
sure,
it's insane because obviously a lot of the things that we already talked about are on there, which didn't surprise me because we're fucking awesome. But one thing was on there, and I didn't know this originally, but did you know that Fresca's zero sugar?
Stop it.
Isn't that amazing?
Stop it. That's all we can get into. That's all we can get into this time. You can find us on TikTok and Instagram at So You Want to Be a DM, or you can ask us a question at soyouwannabeadm@gmail.com. If you like the episode, don't forget to give us 5 stars and a review wherever you found us, and check out the Patreon, the Twitch, our merch, all that jazz down in our description below. And join us next time for more Dungeon Master tips and tricks.
Bye.
And now I get to shout out the members of our Patreon gang. Nub Muffins, may Paylord's light shine upon you. And then there's Tappy, Molly, and Elijah. Thank you all so much for being members of our Patreon gang. Remember, you can find the link to that in the description of the episode. And also remember this. We love you. Thanks again, and tune in next time for more tips and tricks from So You Wanna Be a Dia.